Yeah, well, I came here in 1974. I didn't come down with the unit in 1972, but I gather when the unit came here in 1972, it arrived very under strength to the barracks. Now, the barracks wasn't in great condition because it had been vacant for many periods during its history. And I have the wrong page of my notes turned over, but whatever. Luckily enough for the unit, it was a very charismatic CO. And one of his catchphrases used to be consistently inconsistent. Now, we were very much helped by the mobilised FCA people, which were known as the Full-Time Security Duties, or FTSD. Now, the unit, as I said, had to adapt to its condition in the barracks. Now, our deployment on the border, there were three sectors in the border. There was east, west and the centre. The units on our right and left were infantry battalions, newly raised infantry battalion 27 and 28. Now, the squadron is equal to about a company-sized strength, which would be about a quarter the size of a battalion. So it's not geared to running a military barracks. It was very much like running an installation, that men just disappeared. You had lots of duties which were 24-hour duties, which meant you were resting off the following day then and weren't available to you. Where all the government would want us at any particular time is to have boots on the ground. Now, as well as that, routine training had to go on, such as courses, exercises. People went overseas. Now, our deployment on the border mainly consisted of aid to the civil power, and in practice that meant assisting the Garda Síochána, carrying out such duties as cash in transit, explosives escort, search operations and patrols on the border, and carrying out cordons. Some of the biggest search we had when I was here was the search for Don Tidy. He was a British businessman who had been kidnapped up in Dublin, and the search had been going on for quite a period. But then one day I was called up to the Garda barracks with the brigade commander. We all had to go up in civilian clothes because they were certainly going to mount a huge operation which was going to be run by the structure we were part of, in other words the 4th Brigade, and from Garda headquarters. Now, unfortunately for the Gardaí, when he was kidnapped, they had him both blindfolded and cutting wool in his ear. So he never was able to do this thing that's called the Stockholm Syndrome, where you get friendly with your captors. So when he was rescued, he was unable to give the Gardaí any information, so they never caught him afterwards. Now, unfortunately, although the operation was a success, there was 2 casualties. There was a private soldier from the 6th Battalion and a recruit guard who were killed. Now, all of these operations that we're doing meant long hours out on the border in all sorts of weather, or at checkpoints if security situations were called. So I came here as the adjutant, first of all. Then I became the 2IC.
So what's the 2?
As the second in command. Then after that, then I was promoted, but did 2 more years further up the border in the 29th Battalion up in Cootehill. And eventually, when the man who came here first, Roger McCauley, got promoted, I replaced him back here then. But then, like I said there, the people were coming and going in overseas. That was in 1979. A couple of years later, I went off to the Middle East for 2 years. I came back then in 83 and did another period here from 83 to 86. And then went off again overseas and came back, but went into Athlone then. And then eventually came back for a 3rd period again when the man who replaced me, he was going away on a course. When you're officer commanding, you're responsible for everything your unit does or doesn't do. So to do such a thing, you really want to have eyes in the back of your head, but you have a staff around you to help you run the barracks, an operations officer to do the operations, people to do the records and so on and so forth. But I would be responsible to the brigade commander. This is the formation we worked in, the 4th Brigade. Now that's where the infantry battalions and the artillery down the road in Mullingar, they all were in this structure of the 4th Brigade. So I would be responsible to him to carry out the military duties here, and whatever duties both the 4th Brigade and the Western Command headquarters assigned to us, and we had to carry them out. I would be responsible for that. Well, the most challenging part all the time was to have enough men to carry out the duties that were assigned to us, particularly the operational duties, which was the reason we were here. As I said, lots of time you had to run the installation as well. Now, to help us do that, we had the mobilised FCA men, which helped us greatly, and they carried out a lot of the duties, which released us to take part in the operations. And we wouldn't have functioned without them. Oh yes, because it gave you experience with other armies as well. You could see we're equally as good as them. But like the role here was an internal security role. or outside it was a peacekeeping role. That Congo experience was different from any of the other ones. I was in Cyprus, I was in Central America, the Western Sahara, where I started in Africa. I finished in the Western Sahara as well. That was a different one altogether. But it was because it gave you great experience, and to use your military training that you got here and to apply it abroad to different problems that you were confronted with. So that in turn then to come back here to help you were a more rounded person here as well. But it was looked forward to by everybody. Now, you went out, like I did, went for 6 months, I went for a year trips and 2-year trips. But I'm still at home, but I still like coming back. But I think nearly everybody would say they were quite enjoyable to go overseas. When we came here, the building we're in here at the moment, it wasn't open. There was a terrible cookhouse around here at the back. It was awful conditions. But eventually we got it open and we got the equipment, and that made a huge difference altogether. The main gate, even to get the gym organised, we had a squash court there. These were leisure activities in the barracks that people could put on the square also. It was unusual. There was volleyball nets and all that. So there was people, it wasn't soldering all of the time, although you were available all of the time. But as well as that, as somebody was mentioning there, people lived outside of the barracks. This chapter we're talking, I used to meet it quite a bit in the Curragh, where people just went from the billet to the NCO's mess and rarely went outside the barracks, and therefore had difficulty getting themselves reaccommodated into civilian life and their services. So that really didn't apply here, in my opinion, because lots of the people were married and lived in places like Ballymahon around the place and took part in the community. They weren't living 24 hours here in the barracks. Yeah, well, I think I found always that units down the country in small barracks, they produce a better soldier. Now people in Dublin mightn't agree with what I'm saying there. Because of that situation there, that were involved in the community, they weren't stuck in the barracks 24 hours a day, that they were married, had kids, got involved in voluntary organisations in the community as well. So in their off time, in other words, it wasn't all military, all day, every day. They had an off time where they had wives and families and had other ideas and other duties to do outside. So I thought it was a good idea there that we were right in the centre of the town, if you wish. You just had to walk out the gate and you're in the town. So it was good in that respect. Well, even in British times it was a cavalry barracks as well, but where they'd have stables, our horses were under the bonnet, if you wish. But we had to adopt the buildings to what we had, our equipment, in other words, the vehicles that we had. I think even the turf shed over here, the market house, I think was, they had stables over there. But the fact that we just had to get on with it, although we hadn't got proper garaging for our cars and the stores and all that. So this is what army people are there. You have to use your initiative. It's not going to be a deluxe setup. And suddenly, we're like the border started in 1969, so it wasn't a modern barracks ready just to walk in and do everything. Now, you had to get on with as best you could. But it's sad, like so many things that happened here and the adventures we had over plus the operations. And we would have thought that we gave some service to the state, as Charlie Hockey said once upon a time. But to see it then close down, at one stage you had 200 odd ranks here in the barracks, that including the FCA and the regular personnel, which was, there was a steady government check, if you wish, going into the town. But to see it, all that service was kind of counted for naught, and out the door they went. I was sad that day, but I suppose that's progress. No, the main memory would be the long hard work and the long hours out on duty. And for the FCA, I suppose, constantly doing duty all of the time there. They were my memories of it. Long hours there. I remember going out when I was both a captain and as a commandant there. You go out along we were doing lines of the Shannon. I think it was an escape of prisons, was it, from Mount Joy?
That's right, yeah.
And people were hanging with tiredness, if you wish. As well as that, we managed to get, when I was up in our CNS course, the military college had a big vehicle they'd bring out when you'd be out on the ground, you could be fed on the ground. So we got this down during the Downtidy operation. But it was kind of a cordon, if you wish. So if you were the last guy, it was given out, the grub you get mightn't be in the best nick, unfortunately, but you had to put up with it. One of the greatest questions I was always asked was, what are you doing all day? This was back in the 60s, prior to the troubles breaking out. You never realised that you had to train for the rainy day, and you couldn't just click your fingers and you'd supply trained troops out on the ground. So training for that. Now, everybody knows in their heart and soul that you certainly, the Gardaí are responsible for internal security, and we are supposed to be responsible for external security. But we all know in our heart and soul you couldn't defend the country if somebody, you'd have to be part of another organisation. But here we were, from 1969 onward, we were able to do what we were trained to do. Now, it was bloody hard at times, I must say, in long hours of duty, mainly for the soldiers who were out on the ground. The officers wouldn't have had it so bad at all, really. But those long, long hours, but it held, in my opinion, the state was under threat at the time. And we helped defeat that threat. And as I say, everybody who was here at Sean Connolly Barracks, I think they will be proud of their service and felt that they gave the government and the country some service. Well, I fell into the same trap, I suppose, a lot of people who retired. When I retired, I was trying to tell the wife how to reorganise our kitchen, but I was very quickly disabused of all that. So we settled down for a more orderly life after that. But so anybody I meet who was retired, I ask them, have you had the argument with the wife first, and then after that you can settle down? But no, it made no difference. You just went out, your time was up. You went, and I'm a great believer, when you're gone, you're gone.
Yeah, my name is Pat Donnelly. I belong to the 17th Battalion. I joined on the first day of October 1968, and I done our first basic camp, which would be the introduction to training, on the 19th of October 1968, and it finished on the 31st of October, and I was looking forward the next day to go out shooting. So then in 1971, as Pat said there, full-time security, the FCA people came in. Now, they had to be trained to do security duties in the barracks. So one of my first security was in Mullingar. I'd done 7 months in Mullingar. I trained with the PDF. As I said when I joined in 1968, believe it or not, that the square, as we know it now, it was just an ordinary piece, dust, maintenance we call it. And when the troops came from the south, then there'd be a parade then. And where would the parade? They'd have their boots shined as best they could. They were the old hobnail boots, that's the ones I got first, but you would have to have them, and they'd be all dust. So there was an area basically about 30 metres square of tarmac put on the square, on that area over there. I can pinpoint actually where it was when we go out there at some stage. And that was where the parade took place. Then, as Pat said, in 1972 the squadron came, and Roger McCauley, charismatic figure, he was very well got man in the town. He was involved in the Chamber of Commerce, he was president of the rugby club, and he did, as Pat rightly said, looked after his soldiers. The soldiers could go out the gate, but their homes were down in Connolly Crescent, just below. When you go up the street, you turn down to the left, it's beside the mall. And he would have been instrumental in getting accommodation for his soldiers. And that was a big plus. The cookhouse, as he said, had to be upgraded. It was only there for 3 or 4 people to go in, have a cup of tea, maybe a bit of lunch. There was no full-time cooks, there was nothing. So the engineers on that loan, then the request was made. So they come, and this building now, that's the cookhouse at that stage. Everything took place in the administration block over there. There was living accommodation in it. There was the officers' mess. There was the canteen. There was the troopers' club. There was all the administrative offices where the CO was, the adjutant, the 2IC, and even the medical quarters. I have no hesitation in saying it publicly that it did not achieve anything. The only thing that it did do was discommoded the soldiers, because in this barracks you still had to have heat, you had to have security, and you had to have light, and those things were all paid for, whereas when the soldiers were here, it was self-sufficient. The most unattractive duty would be the guard duty when you were caught out of turn. We had 55 people on full-time security, and you ended up doing a duty a week, but you had to do on the road, or you had to do your weekend when I came in and been playing football, and that it wouldn't be that nice to be caught. But as things moved on, there was fellas leaving, and it came down to 45, and it came down to 30, but we were still tasked with doing the duties because the personnel weren't in the squadron. So eventually the squadron had to do a duty because we hadn't got the manpower. It ended up, I think we had only about 18, and then it came down to 15. And if you take an NCO, which is an uncommissioned officer, i.e. yard commander, and 3 people, that's 4 people used. And the 4 they're arresting off, and the 4 that were going on the next day, that's 12 people gobbled up right away. So you could be caught. We done there was times that we done 3 duties in the week. So you could just go home and come back. There was nothing else for it. So the one thing that would, I done the border, I done most duties, but you were always moving. You never was in the one place like the guard room. And if you were caught out of turn